Welcome. Today's lecture is about learning from sources. We have two main questions. One, what does it mean to read critically? And two, how do we use sources early in the writing process? Because one of the biggest mistakes a student writer can make is to use sources only in the drafting stage of the writing process. In other words, a lot of students will draft an argument and then simply plug in sources that already agree with what they wrote. And we obviously want to avoid that. We want to use sources from the very beginning so that we're crafting well-informed original arguments. Your textbook, In Conversation, A Writer's Guide, describes critical reading as a type of attitude and an approach to reading. So you should adopt a critical attitude, accept nothing at face value, ask questions, look for similarities and differences among your sources, be alert for unusual information, consider the implications of what you just read, be open to ideas and arguments, even if you don't agree, and be prepared to challenge ideas and arguments, because that's how you actually find something new to say. As I said before, a good writer uses sources early in the writing process, not after they've written a draft and when they want to just plug in sources to back up what they already wrote. So to help with that process, I'm going to give you some specific strategies for using sources to learn about a subject. The most important strategies are skim for organization and context first, annotate sources, and take notes. You should always skim an article before you read it word for word because, one, you want to save yourself some time. The article might not be interesting or useful for you, and it's better to find that out early on as opposed to after you read the whole thing. And two, you're going to get more out of a thorough reading of an article if you have a sense of its general argument first. I'm now going to demonstrate these strategies by showing how I read Catlin Tiffany's recent article for The Atlantic, How Quickly Can a Girl Go Viral on TikTok? The first thing I'm going to do when I'm skimming is look at the title. Titles can give you lots of clues about what's in the article. So obviously, titles can give you clues about subject. From this title, How Quickly Can a Girl Go Viral on TikTok? I can look at the keywords and recognize pretty quickly that this is going to be an article about TikTok, girls, and the speed at which they can become popular. Titles and subtitles can also give you clues about the purpose of an argument and genre. So the subtitle for this article is Teens Are Making It Big Overnight, but that kind of fame can be a mixed bag. This gives me clues about the writer's purpose. First of all, it's clear that this writer has a position. So they're taking a stance on the topic. It's not purely informative. There is opinion attached to it. And it gives me some sense of what that opinion or argument will be. In particular, this writer is worried that there might be a downside to TikTok fame. This subtitle also gives me hints about genre. So from reading the subtitle, I can guess this is going to be a reflective essay. It sounds like she'll be making some observations about the teens who became famous on TikTok, and then she's going to use those observations to reflect, to provide some insight or show how we can better understand something through those observations. On page 25, In Conversation, a Writer's Guidebook, points out that different genres tend to ask different research questions. A reflection essay tends to ask, what are the implications of whatever it is that I'm observing? Or how can we learn from the example of an individual or group? So this essay is going to be asking, what are the implications of fame on TikTok? And similarly, what can we learn from the example of teens who have become famous almost overnight? Next, I'm going to skim the opening and closing paragraphs to see if I can get a better sense of the argument, the purpose of the argument, and the scope of the argument. The first paragraph says, a girl sits alone on an ugly couch, stroking a plastic fish and mouthing the words to Jason Derulo's Ride and Solo. Her eyes are bloodshot. She puts on sunglasses to cover them up, just as Derulo says he does in the song. This doesn't tell me a whole lot. It's a hook that's trying to get me interested, but I don't really know the argument yet, so I'll keep reading. This video, uploaded to TikTok in July, has more than 11.4 million views. It was posted by @Mooptopia, who emerged from nowhere at the beginning of July and has since become an unexpected star. She now has 2.5 million followers, despite the fact that nothing about her account is remarkable. She's a teenager in what seems to be an average suburb where she walks around and dances awkwardly and sometimes growls. So here we get a sense of her main example. She's going to be talking about Mooptopia. We get some sense of the argument that this is a platform where someone can make weird videos and in a matter of months get millions and millions of followers. I still don't have a great sense of the argument, so I'm going to keep reading. The most striking thing about this episode is how typical it is. Getting famous on TikTok can happen very quickly. In a matter of months, a highly driven teen can build an audience that translates into millions of dollars in endorsement deals. Yada, yada, yada. Young people go viral on social media platforms such as YouTube and Instagram too, but TikTok is unique in how its algorithm pulls oddities out of the blue and pushes them into a main feed seen by millions of people. And many of those millions of people are teens. More than 40% of TikTok users are ages 16 to 24, and the FTC has alleged that a significant portion of users are even younger than that. Now, because of the pandemic, they're all spending more time on the app than they did before, which hadn't even seemed possible. Okay, so from this, I do have a general understanding of the scope of her argument. It seems to me she is going to be arguing that it's more common for ordinary, average teenagers to become quickly famous on TikTok. More common than that has ever been on other forms of media, including other forms of social media, which is interesting. That's an interesting, unique observation. I could see some cool analysis coming out of her reflection on that observation. So I'm going to keep reading. While I'm skimming, I'm also going to go all the way to the bottom and read the very last paragraph to see if that will also help me get a sense of where this argument's going, how it's going to end. Here we go. TikTok is a massive network of girls talking primarily to one another, and by most available evidence, they understand what they're doing. Mooptopia has enough followers to start thinking about endorsements and off-platform success, but has deliberately staked out a very different path for reasons only she knows. TikTok's creator team says she isn't working with any of its in-house growth strategists to establish a bigger career. She may have achieved viral fame, and she may have felt its sting as well, but her story is still a mystery, just the way she seems to like it. So without knowing the full story, I do get the sense that something bad happens to Mooptopia. She feels the sting of her TikTok fame, but it doesn't look like this writer comes to a definitive conclusion about whether or not TikTok fame is good or bad. And I find that a little frustrating. So it doesn't look like I'm going to get a firm answer or conclusion from this author about whether or not she thinks this type of fame is damaging. And I can already sort of critique this argument. I think it needs to be a little bit more clear in its conclusion. Your textbook also recommends skimming the captions of photos of figures and skimming to check for headings and subheadings to learn more about content and how the article is organized. There aren't any headings in here, so that's not going to be helpful in this case. When we're skimming, it's also a good idea to check for font that is in bold, colored, italicized, made especially large. Writers tend to do that when they want to emphasize something. I'm not seeing any of that here, so again, not helpful. We can also check for links to other sites that they're directing you to get some of the background information. I am going to watch the video from Mooptopia that she is describing. I think that's going to give me some valuable background information so I can understand her argument. Okay, so yeah, I understand what she's saying. Kind of basic production values, very at home, ordinary production values. She looks very ordinary. She looks like a teenage girl you would see in any, she's very girl next door, nothing particularly special about her appearance. There's no great talent that she's showing. So I understand her point that it's a very ordinary but goofy video that somehow, seemingly magically, went viral. Okay, let's recap skimming for context. You're going to check the title for clues about content. You're going to skim the opening and closing paragraphs for the purpose and scope of the argument. You're going to check headings, subheadings, and photo captions. And you're going to scan for boldface, colored, or italicized text. Work smarter, not harder.